Hello, and thank you all for joining us today for our discussion on how to meet the evolving requirements for the enterprise desktop, and in specific, how to empower users with desktops and applications delivered directly from the cloud. So first, here's a little quick look at our agenda. We'll begin with a brief discussion on how the user desktop environment has evolved into the diverse and dynamic interfaces we rely on today. And we'll also look at current adoption trends for the various types of desktops. That will set the stage for us to talk about the many challenges IT operations face in delivering and supporting these changing desktop environments, and how traditional desktop management processes are rapidly becoming impractical and ineffective. We'll discuss the value of desktop virtualization and how the basic concepts can be leveraged to resolve many of the emerging challenges. Drilling down further, we'll also talk about desktop as a service, which enables desktop virtualization instances to be delivered directly from public clouds. And we'll reveal some of the key use cases where desktop as a service is particularly valuable at meeting evolving desktop business requirements. And finally, we'll sum it all up with just a few conclusions on optimizing desktop management in this rapidly changing IT industry. Central to any modern business are the computing resources that are essential for developing, manufacturing, testing, marketing, and selling products and services. To access the computers serving these applications, data, and services, users rely on a client. A client is any physical device that acts as an interface between a user and the software they are accessing. People often forget that the first real clients were basically dumb terminals that essentially just echo data, text data back that was remotely processed on a big mainframe in the data center. And this was the advent of terminal computing, which is distinctive because all the users are simultaneously accessing the same computer instance, including the same applications, files, and reports. Terminal computing survives today and connects users to a variety of servers other than mainframes. They're also much more sophisticated than they used to be, with dumb terminals giving way to smart terminals and thin clients that actually have some local resources, such as disk, memory, and processors, to allow them to boost performance and display complex graphical images without being affected by any limitations of the network that's connecting the terminal to the server. But 30 years ago or so, client terminals were very rudimentary devices. And of course, all that changed in the 1980s with the simultaneous introduction of two key computing advances. The first was distributed computing, where logically segmented applications and services were each hosted separate on separate dedicated servers rather than sharing a piece of a central mainframe. Clients were now needed that could access multiple servers from a single location. Now, fortunately, the second major advancement of this time period also arose to fill this gap. And I know you've all been mumbling the answer to this to yourselves. It was, of course, the desktop PC. Unlike the dumb terminal, a PC was a computer itself, so applications and data could be delivered to and run locally on the client. The early desktop PCs were adopted by enterprises primarily to support accounting processes and word processing. But use cases truly exploded when graphical user interfaces were introduced by, first by Apple and then later Microsoft. As the technologies improved, smaller, more portable versions of the PC entered the market and were the first truly mobile computing devices, the laptop. As many of you will likely recall, the smaller the laptops became, the more popular they were adopted until around the turn of the 21st century when they surpassed the desktop PC as the dominant form of client computing. And it wasn't long after this that the enterprise client computing market would experience another significant shakeup with the introduction of the smartphone. Research in Motion introduced the first BlackBerry smartphone in 2003, and the platform grew significantly in popularity thanks to its ability to send and retrieve email. This was a milestone for the business use of smartphones as enterprises began adopting BlackBerry devices to replace antiquated pager systems, as they provided a far superior method of ensuring personnel were contactable. But it really wasn't until Apple's introduction of the iPhone in 2007 that the mobile device revolution truly began. Thanks to its ease of use and quickly expanding software library, the iPhone was popularly adopted by home consumers and then brought into businesses to help them with their job tasks. This popularity led to an explosion in iPhone-like platforms, most notably with devices built on Google's Android operating system that was introduced towards the end of 2007. Not content with just the iPhone success, Apple made another huge leap with the release of the iPad in April 2010. And Apple continues to dominate the tablet market space today, but not without competition from Android and most recently from Windows-based tablets. Today, all of these client architectures, terminals, thin clients, desktop PCs, laptops, smartphones, and tablets, all of these are being relied on as mechanisms for enterprise users to access and use business-critical applications, data, and services. To meet this rising demand, enterprises must ensure these resources are available on a wide variety of devices and operating systems. Before we move on, I just wanted to pause to review some of the key definitions because although these terms are bandied about quite frequently, it's not always clear what people are referring to when they use them. An operating system is the base software on a computer that acts as an interpreter between the user and the physical device. It provides the drivers and instruction sets so you can actually run programs and perform tasks. A file system is often integrated with an operating system and provides the logically nested series of files, folders, and directories that make it easy to store and retrieve information. Now, the word desktop actually has two different meanings. The desktop PC is, of course, a physical device, whereas a desktop environment is a graphical user interface that is directly integrated with the operating system to provide easy access to files and applications. But this should not be confused with a workspace environment, which is a group of applications that runs on top of an operating system. Now, the reason people get confused by these terms is because the most common PC environments, Windows and Mac, include all four of these components. They are an operating system, file system, desktop environment, and workspace environment all rolled up together. But there is no reason these need to be bundled together. In fact, mobile platforms, including iOS and Android, do not actually natively contain a file system, which is why they don't have folders. Also, Unix and Linux systems sometimes support an operating system without an integrated desktop. And thin clients sometimes run workspace environments without an operating system, file system, or desktop environment. These are simply independent software layers that can be organized in any way to best support a desired user experience. Just focusing on operating systems for a moment. Here is our recent data showing enterprise adoption rates for smartphones, tablets, and PC platforms. Again, this is the percentage of platforms adopted by business professionals, not home consumers, which is a very different market space. iPhones and Android phones dominate the enterprise smartphone market, a position confidently held by BlackBerry as recently as 2 years ago. However, BlackBerry still has a loyal following with some large businesses, particularly in the financial and government sectors. Not surprisingly, the tablet market is all about the iPad, although we do see a few Android tablets as well. Both Windows tablets and smartphones have displayed modest growth to date and are expected to continue gaining market share over the next 12 to 24 months in the enterprise space, despite much more lackluster numbers in the consumer market for Microsoft. As for PCs, you've undoubtedly read an article or two about the increased business adoption of Apple Macs. And indeed, our research data does show that the enterprise PC market share of Macs has doubled from 3.5% to 7% in just the past 2 years. Now, that's substantial growth. But let's keep this in perspective. Windows deployments still hold 92% of the enterprise market space. Among Windows users, the platform of choice is Windows 7, with 13% of respondents indicating they have actually already moved to Windows 8. Interestingly, a quarter of respondents indicated they were still relying on Windows XP, and we'll look at that a little closer in just a little bit. Now, back when desktop management just meant really just supporting Windows PCs and maybe a few Macs, administration was manageable, but it still involved a wide range of challenges because each client is a completely self-contained unit with its own set of applications and data. For instance, installing or upgrading systems becomes very time-consuming since each and every box needs to be remotely provisioned, and each client will be configured differently to support the unique needs of their individual users. This inhibits standardization and increases the complexity of the support stack. Complex, non-standard environments are more prone to human errors and make problems difficult to diagnose because administrators are not aware of which configuration elements have been customized on which devices. Similarly, patching all the various operating systems, drivers, and applications across all the client endpoints can be time-consuming and can reduce the performance of clients while they are being deployed. Also, because there is a lag time between when a new patch is detected and when the last desktop is updated, businesses are often placed at risk. A common method for hackers to introduce a new attack is to look at a new patch as soon as it is released from a vendor, and then reverse engineer that patch to discover what vulnerability it was designed to fix. The hacker will then create a malware specifically designed to target that vulnerability, knowing full well that most users will not update their systems for days or even weeks after the patch has been released. And this is called zero-day attacks, and clearly articulates the need for prompt patching of all managed devices. So earlier I noted that roughly a quarter of all desktops are still using Windows XP. Now the reason this is a problem is because XP is reaching official end of life next April. After that date, users will need to purchase special and costly maintenance contracts with Microsoft in order to receive security updates. Those who do not will be vulnerable to zero-day attacks essentially forever. Migrating off XP, however, is not necessarily an easy task. Some older PCs do not have sufficient resources to run the newer version of Windows. There are applications and driver compatibility issues. Even applications that are compatible may have dependencies, such as a database, that are not compatible. Administrators may also need to change configuration settings, scripts, and batch files to support the new operating system. And all these tasks need to be performed independently on every XP device in the business. It is also important to note that traditional desktop management processes were never designed to support increased workforce mobility. To understand the scope of this challenge, you must realize there are actually two different types of IT mobility that need to be addressed today, or what I like to actually call the two faces of mobility. The first is about the portability of the device. That is, you carry your business resources with you at home, in the office, at Starbucks, or while shopping for last-minute Christmas presents at the mall. Your work, applications, and data are always with you. This is where smartphones, tablets, and laptops play a critical role. The second type of mobility is the ability to access business resources from any device. For instance, if you're on your home PC or your personal tablet, you have access to the same applications and data that you have on your work laptop. Workforce mobility is about enabling business IT resources to be accessible from any device, at any location, and at any time. According to EMA Primary Research, 98% of all business professionals that regularly utilize a computing device as part of their job are dependent on a laptop or desktop. 87% of enterprise users employ a PC and at least one mobile device. Now, what this means is that mobile devices are being adopted to supplement business PCs, not replace them. And this is critical because it means enterprises now have a much larger number of devices, architectures, and operating systems they need to support and secure, and each must provide users access to the same common applications, data, and services. Workforce mobility also creates new challenges for business security. The small form factor of mobile devices makes them easy targets for loss or theft. In fact, according to our recent research, 1 out of every 8 mobile devices containing business data will be lost or stolen. Sensitive business data could also be compromised if it is on a system owned by a user that has been terminated from employment. Also of concern is the fact that the majority of business data is being shared by users via unsecured delivery methods. Now, these include generic email, messaging, Dropbox, and other open cloud services. Data can also be copied and shared over physical media like USB drives. Additionally, by enabling remote access to the business network, a potential point of entry is created that can be exploited to enable unauthorized access to business IT resources. And viruses and malware, like Trojan horses, worms, and spyware, are also critical security violations on both PCs and mobile devices. Organizations that have introduced solutions to monitor and prevent these security risks must also be aware that devices that have been rooted or jailbroken can completely circumvent automated security processes. And all of these security risks must be mitigated invisibly to the end user. That is, without limiting their access to or productivity with applications and data legitimately necessary for the performance of their job. And also without affecting their ability to perform personal tasks on their device as well. It's important to recognize that client devices are being used to perform both personal tasks and business tasks. And you've likely heard these called bring your own devices or BYOD requirements. But that phrase is actually just a bit of a misnomer, because the challenge is just as applicable to business-owned devices as they are to employee-owned devices. If the end user is authorized to be used for both personal and business tasks, regardless of who owns it, the device must be selectively supported. That is, business applications and data must be secured and managed without impacting a user's personal use of the device. And by the way, BYOD concepts are just as applicable to laptops and desktop PCs as they are to smartphones and tablets, because let's face it, laptops in particular are often used for both business and personal tasks, and in some cases are even owned by the employees. Fortunately, desktop virtualization offers a relief to many of today's client management challenges. Desktop virtualization is a software technology that abstracts a desktop environment or elements of a desktop environment from the physical device used to support it. Now, there are many different types of desktop virtualizations, but basically they could be segmented into 5 categories. First, earlier we did talk about terminal services, which had its start on the mainframe and actually predates desktops in delivering applications to users. And technically, this is a form of desktop virtualization. Today, terminal services are used whenever a single application or a set of applications needs to be accessed by a large number of users. Virtual desktop infrastructure, or VDI, is the most commonly recognized form of desktop virtualization, where each user has a separate desktop that is hosted and run on a server in the data center somewhere. All the computing processing is actually performed on the server, and then essentially just displayed back to any supported client device. Application virtualization works similarly, but only individual applications are hosted on servers and delivered to client devices rather than the whole desktop. So these first 3 categories, terminal services, VDI, and application virtualization, are all types of server-hosted desktop virtualization. That is, all processing happens on a remote server in the data center. With client-hosted desktop virtualization, desktops are stored and managed in a central location in the data center and then downloaded to the clients. All processing is then performed locally on the client devices themselves. And the final type is client hypervisors, which is about virtualizing the client device, separating it into 2 or more distinct desktops that a user can switch between. For example, maybe you want to run both Windows and a Linux desktop on your laptop that you can switch between. So clearly there is no one-size-fits-all solution for desktop virtualization, and each organization should adopt the approach that will best fit its unique business requirements. Now, in fact, this is the very reason VMware actually offers solutions in all 5 of these categories. They certainly recognize the business requirements. Businesses require flexibility in how they deliver IT resources. According to our research, more than 1/3 of all business professionals are today using some form of desktop virtualization, with another 18% reporting to use their intent to adopt it within the next year. If this holds true, we can expect desktop virtualization adopters to cross the 50% mark by the end of 2014, and that indicates a remarkably fast-growing field. Looking across business sizes, we find that the largest adopters of desktop virtualization are businesses in the upper tier of the mid-market, specifically those with between 250 and 10,000 employees. By industry, finance, manufacturing, retail, and healthcare stand out as major adopters in our research. Although I should point out that education on this chart should actually be much higher. In fact, it may even be at the top tier. The problem is that this particular survey only included business professionals, so education respondents were just teachers and administrators, not students, and most desktop virtualization implementations in educational institutions are targeted at supporting the students. The telecom industry is also notable here, though, as even though they've had modest adoption to date, a whopping 31% of respondents indicated expectations to adopt desktop virtualization solutions sometimes within the next 12 months. Desktop virtualization offers a variety of advantages over traditional static desktops. Most notable is the fact that they are managed centrally on servers in the local data center. This means administrators only need to go to one location to provision, patch, update, and configure all desktops and applications in the support stack. Standards are also more easily created since admins don't have to physically access dozens or hundreds of remote devices. Once a change is made to the hosted VMs, it is instantly propagated to anyone accessing it, eliminating distribution delays that could cause business risks like zero-day attacks. Admins can also more rapidly detect and resolve problems because they can locally see the environment, increasing the reliability of desktops and applications. And desktop virtualization also reduces the cost of operations. Simplified management reduces administrative costs, and operations can reduce license costs by pooling resources because you don't need to install a separate instance of each application onto each endpoint. And organizations that use thin clients will see dramatically reduced capital costs, as thin clients are far less expensive and consume far less energy than a full-blown desktop PC. So as an example, and to call out what we're seeing in education institutions, let's take a quick look at how they're using desktop virtualization today. Most education institutions have a classroom or a workroom with desktops that need to be completely refreshed every semester, and each desktop needs to be configured in exactly the same way for the students. But as we know, schools often have limited support personnel that really don't have the time to do a complete reinstallation of every desktop on a regular basis. Security is also a big concern because students, let's face it, are becoming increasingly savvy in how to circumvent restricted environments and don't always make the best decisions in how they use their devices. Desktop virtualization simplifies this process because the administration is happening centrally. A single button click can reset all the desktops back to their default standard configuration, and new applications can be simply added, dropped into the standard template, and applied to all the desktops simultaneously. Similarly, security is more easily hardened by enabling security standards and deploying patches instantly across all the desktops. But suppose your organization does not have the data center infrastructure to host a desktop virtualization implementation. Well, you can still achieve the same value by adopting a solution that is hosted in a public cloud. This is called Desktop as a Service, or DaaS. And it offers all the benefits of traditional desktop virtualization, but without the back office complexities and related implementation costs. Since the service is completely hosted and managed by a provider, desktop instances are easily provisioned when you need them and for as long as you need them. And they are supported by IT professionals with the knowledge to ensure the services are completely secure and highly available with built-in backup and business continuity features. A DaaS implementation can host individual applications, a workspace with multiple applications, or a whole desktop environment. And what's really nice is, since there are no upfront infrastructure or operational costs, you don't need to make a commitment to the platform. It's a service. You can try a single instance or a set of instances, see if the users like it, and then buy more only if it meets your business requirements. You're not stuck with a single vendor or an excessive hardware investment. Just sign up and go and discontinue the service when you no longer need it. DaaS solutions should be of particular interest to SMBs that have limited support resources. Also, subscription prices is often much more easier for SMBs to budget than large upfront license fees. Additionally, DaaS is ideally suited for any organization that needs to support remote implementation, such as at a branch office or satellite business units or outsourced workers, because they are all equally accessible from a public cloud and do not require any specialized wide area network to manage and secure. DaaS is also a very powerful method for enabling migration. You can host a new environment, such as a virtual desktop, and access it with existing devices regardless of their configuration. Individual applications do not need to be immediately ported to the new environment because they can be run as virtual apps. For example, apps designed for Windows XP could be virtualized and run on Windows 8 PCs. Eventually, you'll want to actually port those applications to the new environment, of course, but this will help you buy the time that you need to make that happen, and it will prevent the application portings from holding up the migration process. DaaS is also very easy to roll back in the event some unforeseen problems occur. Simply spin up a desktop VM in the old environment and let users work in that while you resolve the problems in the new environment. And this is applicable to any migration project, not just Windows. If you're thinking of moving your users to Macs or to Linux, this is the easiest way to do it with minimal disruptions to business productivity. And obviously, desktop as a service is ideal for supporting workforce mobility as well. Applications, workspaces, and whole desktops can be made accessible on any device without needing to port applications or manage different versions. One point of management for all user devices. And again, as a cloud-based solution, the desktops are available from any location without having to manage cumbersome access through firewalls or tunneling systems like VPN, which could be exploited by someone wishing to gain unauthorized access to the business. From a user perspective, this means they can access all their business apps, data, and services in a consistent manner from any device they choose to use. So both types of mobility are being supported. DaaS is a highly secure environment because no business data is ever actually delivered to the endpoint. Users are constrained to only access and manipulate business data using the applications they have been authorized by their employer to use for them. And since the data and apps are hosted and managed in the cloud, rooting or jailbreaking a client device will not circumvent enterprise security protocols. Similarly, in the event a device is lost or an employee is terminated, the organization only needs to disable access to the DaaS service rather than to try to remotely delete any sensitive data that could be damaging to the business. Devices that are used to perform both business and personal tasks can be supported with BYOD processes through a DaaS deployment. But the very nature of desktop virtualization, all business resources are completely isolated from any local applications running on the devices. This grants users the complete freedom to use their devices any way they want without violating business requirements. Users simply switch to the business desktop when they are doing work and return to their native desktop when they are playing Candy Crush or something. And as we've mentioned, desktop as a service greatly simplifies the life of IT administrators. All desktops are managed from a single centralized interface that allows users to be managed individually or in groups. For example, maybe you want to have a common workspace environment set up for your sales workers or your accountants or your developers. Each logical group can be managed collectively, greatly reducing the number of mundane tasks that need to be performed. This consolidated view also enables a single location for tracking software and for performing reports on desktop use to simplify problem remediation and enable compliance audits. Well, we certainly covered a lot of ground in our discussion of the evolving desktop, but to sum it all up with just a few takeaways from this presentation, we've seen how broad growth in the adoption of desktop virtualization solutions is being driven by increasing requirements for improved security, flexibility, and mobility of business applications, data, and services. Also, desktop-as-a-service platforms leverage the reliability and elasticity of the cloud to simplify client management while at the same time reducing operational costs and improving cross-platform support of business resources. DaaS solutions deliver a secure and reliable method for meeting mobility and BYOD requirements by isolating business resources to ensure they meet enterprise requirements without impacting user productivity or satisfaction with their devices. And with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Dave to tell us a little bit about how VMware's Desktone is addressing these problems. Dave?
Perfect, thank you, and thanks for that overview. Very thorough. It makes my job very easy here. But my name's Dave Grant. As mentioned, I manage the strategy for DaaS at VMware and the Desktone by VMware platform that many service providers use today to deliver a desktop as a hosted service, as Steve mentioned throughout the presentation. We were built differently from day one because we were purpose-built for delivering virtual desktops in the cloud. I think Steve did a great job of going through the various technologies that are in use in desktop virtualization today, the history. And so when we set out to build a platform that could deliver a high-performing, economical, full-featured desktop as a hosted service, we felt that it was needed to build it from day one with some features in mind that were very different than enterprise deployments of virtual desktop technologies. So I think we did a good job of describing what it is and how it works, but really quickly, the overview is a cloud provider, whether they be a service provider, cloud provider, you name your local regional service provider that handles your IT outsourcing, or large companies, they host the Desktone by VMware platform in their data centers. They ensure the SLA, they ensure the performance, and they deliver these desktops to you, the end customer, as a hosted virtual desktop. So you consume the desktops, you can consume it in the remote office, mobile workers, corporate offices. It really doesn't matter what, the whole concept and point here is, it doesn't matter what kind of device you're accessing these desktops with. You should be able to get your full-featured Windows environment that you use every day and your work environment available to you on any device, anywhere. And that's the real value proposition here. So what we like to say is that the cloud and the DaaS model can make what some people think is complex relatively easy. And what we mean by that is we like to draw this line of demarc of where you, the end customer IT organization, have to manage the bits and pieces of a desktop virtualization deployment. Typically, if you were going to try and do this yourself on your own premise and deploy all the technology stack, you'd have to do everything below the line here. Software, you'd have to get the facilities, you'd have to get the hardware, the support, the guarantee, the monitoring for SLAs. In a DaaS model, this is exactly what the service provider takes care of. They do what they're very good at, and they've built a business on for years, which is delivering data center solutions, high-performing, highly secure, to you, the end user. Now, what you can provide is still everything above the waterline, because what we see here is many customers say to us, I already have a great desktop engineering practice. I've been perfecting it for years. I feel like I do patch management very well. I do image management very well. I know what applications I want in my image. Let me handle that. I have a help desk team. And so the solution lets you change that line of responsibility depending on your competencies and your comfort level. So we have end customers that say, you know what, I want the service provider to do everything, all the way up to desktop management and help desk. Or I want the service provider only to take care of the back-end infrastructure. And so the point of this slide is that if you choose the right DaaS solution in the marketplace, you should be able to consume all the benefits of a desktop virtualization approach without some of the complexity that's involved in doing it yourself. Now, I thought Steve did a great job of highlighting the different technologies available and the fact that us here at VMware have all these checkboxes for all these different technologies. This is really important because not one workspace suits everybody. And it's important for security reasons, for cost reasons, that you can mix and match. And the example I like to use here is if you look at the bottom, let's say, for example, you have knowledge workers that really can't give up their Windows 7 or Windows 8 environment. You know, they're heavy users of certain applications. They need to customize. They need to use web widgets. They need to use web services. They need to have full administrative rights to a desktop. Well, that 80% maybe of your population falls into that category. Well, in this case, tell your service provider, I want a full Windows 7, full VDI session for those people, and they get a full desktop experience that looks exactly the same as if they're using their physical machine. Now, you might have another set of users, whether they be call center workers, task workers, or maybe students or people that don't require that persistent experience of a desktop being theirs, that you could deliver shared session desktops. And Steve did a good job of showing the history of terminal services and terminal computing and all that. There's still lots of room in this market for those types of users as well. Maybe that's a much lower cost solution, and in every case, that will be a much lower cost solution than the full feature Windows 7 and 8 machines. Maybe somebody needs Linux, for example. And then lastly, maybe somebody just needs apps. They're mobile workers. They're running around with iPads or Droid tablets. They're healthcare workers. They don't need desktops. They just need apps. But the apps that you need to deliver to them have not been rewritten for iPads and Droids. They're not web-enabled. And you need to deliver these Windows applications out to these devices. That might be another 5%. Then you can start to see now, well, if you choose the right provider that can mix and match here, not only are you delivering what the end user needs versus overcomplicating things, but your cost model, your blended cost model significantly declines, because now you're not forcing in an overpowered solution for people that may not need it. And so when you're looking at DaaS environments, be sure to consider the various types of desktop, and desktop probably isn't even the right word here, maybe workspace or end-user computing services that are required. Profile that out, and then think about, can the provider you're looking at provide you with various types of computing environments. Hopefully you know who we are, but I'll finish up here and we're going to open up the floor for questions, but didn't want to make this an advertisement. Just want to let you know who we are. Desktone was a company that was acquired by VMware about 3 months ago now, so we are Desktone, a VMware company. We provided, as I mentioned earlier, a platform for delivering DaaS to end users. So service providers, cloud providers use us, and we have many of the leading cloud and service providers in the world using us today, if you look at the samples in the bottom, to deliver a multi-tenant environment to enable them to deliver full-featured DaaS at an economical price to their end users. We have over 40 partners, over 100-plus customers, and we've really differentiated our technology. We have a network around the world that you can choose from in terms of delivering DaaS. This is very important. In VDI and desktop virtualization, you probably know this, but you really want to make sure that the bandwidth requirements in those environments are matched to where the data center resides. Because it's a desktop and it's obviously something that requires good performance, you want to reduce latency as much as possible. And what that means is distance can be a killer for latency. You want to choose service providers that can provide you data center coverage in the regions where your end users reside. This is a key value proposition of desktops as a service. Because differently than doing it yourself, where you might build a data center for VDI in your headquarters in Kansas City, but then you want to service your UK-based workers as well, that's going to provide a pretty poor performance more than likely. Wouldn't it be better if you contracted with a service provider that had a data center in the Kansas City region or in the center of the country, and then they also had one in the UK where they could service those users and so on, all connected through one common user interface, enabling you to deliver a high-performing desktop in those regions, and also enabling you in IT to be able to see one point of view, one single pane of glass to manage all those desktops on a global basis. So again, just like you'd look at your user base profile for the types of desktops they would possibly require, I'd advise you to also look at locations and decide whether or not, when you're looking at a service provider to deliver DaaS, whether they can meet the needs of your locations. So I'll finish up here. Hopefully we've proven that DaaS can make things easier for many people that are trying to do a virtual desktop strategy or VDI deployments. It's available in many different types of desktop models, whether it be full Windows 7 and 8, applications, session-based desktops. Just make sure that you target the right use cases, the right people, the right scenarios with the right technology. Don't let vendors convince you that you need something more than you possibly need. for your users. You can target the right use case to the right technology. We like to say we're often imitated by many out there, but not duplicated. We are the first and only virtual desktop company to deliver full Windows 7 as a cloud service at an economical price because of our technical differentiators. And top of that list is the fact that we're a multi-tenanted solution, which enables a low-cost delivery. It's grid-based for scale, so it again lowers the cost. We provide role separation to ensure a separation of duties between the user, the service provider, and IT, and then this multi-desktop model. So again, when you're looking at providers, and if you are a provider yourself and want to offer DaaS, be sure to think about these types of features and function before you go down a path of other technologies. So with that, I want to, again, thank you for joining us. Hopefully this was educational. And I want to pass it back to Raleigh, who's going to take questions and answers. Feel free to ask away. Raleigh?
Great. Thank you, David. Before I jump into the Q&A, I did want to bring the 7-day free trial of DaaS to everyone's attention. I'll also be including this URL in the follow-up email that you'll be getting tomorrow. So let's go ahead and jump right into the questions. David, I'll first address this one to you. Is it possible to use more than one desktop on a given end-user device? For example, if I want to deliver a certain desktop to a remote worker who may want to keep their own desktop separate.
Yes, most definitely. I thought the first question was, could you actually pipe in 2 different DaaS desktops to the same device, which you can, by the way. So, for example, I have a portal that I access on my Mac, and in that portal, I can choose my Windows 7 desktop, or I can choose my Linux desktop to go in and use on that same device. Now, I think the real question here is, can I use one for personal and one for corporate? That is absolutely one of the key value propositions of the concept of BYOD, as Steve mentioned, or as lots of people like to call it, bring your own cache, BYOC. For example, I have a Mac computer that I have all my personal things on, and then when I'm ready to do corporate work, I log into my virtual desktop on that Mac. It's totally separated, but I can use both. I can flip back and forth very easy by minimizing windows, and it's as simple as minimizing one application to open another. And the benefit here is that you can use the same machine for personal and corporate life and ensure that there's no cross, infection or pollination between those 2 environments. So it keeps it highly secure. I think I see some questions coming in here, Raleigh, as well. I think I'll answer one of them. How are you addressing Windows 7 SPLA restrictions for delivering a full Windows 7 and Windows 8 service? A good question, and because we're the only vendor that have come up with a way to deliver a full Windows 7 and 8 economically under the restrictions of Windows SPLA, I could definitely answer that. We have built a multi-tenant model that does not spread the compute tenant in the back end so that it still adheres to Microsoft policy when it comes to not sharing Windows 7 and Windows 8 across customers, across the compute. We do use multi-tenancy in the management infrastructure and many other layers to ensure we're delivering the most economical virtual desktop in the market. And so in that environment, and by the way, if you do want to share compute, our product also enables the ability for you to do that. So you can use Microsoft Server, you can use session-based desktop technology to also use a full multi-tenant model where you're actually sharing compute as well. But if you don't want to share compute and under the SPLA license and do Windows 7 and 8, the platform isolates the tenants in the back end, virtual networking. This is a key differentiator in the marketplace for Desktone, and a reason why most of the DaaS providers in the world that are delivering full Windows 7 and 8 choose the Desktone platform for delivering those desktops.
Great, thank you, David, for jumping in there. I realized I had my line on mute. So, Steve, let's go ahead and jump over to you. Which is better, desktop virtualization or workspace virtualization?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and actually, just as a reminder, that the oversimplified definition defining the difference between the two is desktop virtualization. The desktop is integrated with the operating system, whereas workspace virtualization, the workspace operates on top of the operating system. But it really depends on the use case. Now, remember, a desktop environment is because it's integrated with the operating system. If you are using say, thin clients or zero clients, then you probably want to use desktop virtualization to give the users the full PC-like experience. Desktop virtualization is also great for cross-platform support, like making your Windows PC look like a Mac. If all you need, though, is a set of applications delivered to your device, then workspace virtualization is probably the best answer. Since a workspace is just limited to the software components you need, less information needs to be downloaded from the server. So performance over the network is improved. Workspace virtualization is also typically has a lower license cost since you don't have to pay for the full desktop.
Great, thanks, Steve. David, there's still been a number of questions coming in about the VMware solution, so I'll jump back over to you. What makes Desktone different from other vendors like Citrix and Amazon?
Good question. The Amazon one's easy. Amazon only delivers one type of desktop in, well, the easiest question is it's not available yet. It's been publicly announced and they've been doing some private betas, but it's not available yet. It's brand new. It is also a compromised desktop approach in that they are using only Windows Server technology in the back end, which enables them to get around the SPLA licensing problem that Microsoft has introduced with their licensing restrictions. However, for most companies, especially any companies of large size that have many different types of applications, many mid to large organizations can have thousands of Windows applications they have in their image library. They're just not able to consume Windows Server desktops. Instead, using Windows servers as desktops instead of a full-feature Windows 7 and 8 because those applications haven't been tested. Even Microsoft will tell you they don't support it and don't want you to do it. So just for that reason alone, it carves off a large portion of the market. You saw Steve's stats around mid to large companies being high adopters of this technology. That makes that product pointless for those people. From a Citrix perspective, Citrix has a product that is single-tenant, and so therefore it's fine for single deployments on enterprises, but not relevant for when you want to offer a scalable DaaS model. Because if you are a service provider, you're going to have to stand up separate environments for every single one of your customer situations, and that's a management nightmare. By the time you get up into dozens, hundreds, or thousands of customers, you've now stood up separate infrastructures for every single one of those people. And why that matters to the customer, the end customer, is the price is beyond an economical model. So every time we've seen a customer come back and ask, why is this cloud provider saying that it's going to cost me $60 or $70 a month to deliver a full VDI session, very quickly you can realize it's because they're using a single tenant product like Citrix under the covers to deliver that solution.
Thanks, David, for that insight. We've also received a number of questions regarding pricing. Can you discuss how Desktone prices?
There's really two models here. So there's a model that we price to our service provider partners, because remember, we don't sell directly. So of course, our service provider partners pay us a royalty on a monthly basis. They only pay when they get paid, a true cloud model. So when they sign up a customer for an agreement, we get paid based on how many seats that customer bought. Now, it's up to the service provider to then decide what they want to do in terms of market pricing. And so it will depend on the service provider that I had on my list on that map that you saw, but you can keep in mind that it will be by user and then by the spec of the machine. Just like you would if you went in and bought a Dell machine at Best Buy, you will go to the service provider and you'll choose the spec that you want. The compute, the RAM, the storage, and then they'll tell you how much that will be on a monthly basis for your user. And it's a budgeted item. It won't change. That's one of the nice things about this. Is you can really, it's an operational expense versus a capital expense, and you can really budget it out over a year, 2, 3 year period. It will be a consistent number over that entire period with no ups and downs in the model. But again, hard to give you a market price, but it will be per user, per month, and then dependent on the type of power you want under the covers of that machine.
Great, thank you, David. Now let's jump back over to you, Steve. I really like this question. This audience member wants to know, do users spend more time on their devices performing business tasks or personal tasks? What have you seen?
Oh, that is a great question. So we've clearly determined that the vast majority of mobile devices, whether employee-owned or business-owned, are being used for both business and personal tasks. But you may be surprised to learn that that business professionals are using their devices slightly more often for for business purposes than for personal stuff. Now, according to our research, on average, 56% of the time an enterprise user employs his mobile device, it is spent on business tasks. As you would expect, the number is slightly higher for companies' owned devices and slightly lower for employee-owned devices. But in either case, business uses consistently fall within that 50 to 60% ballpark.
Thanks, and kind of in that same vein, this audience member wants to know which business applications are used most often on PCs and which are used most often on mobile devices.
Yeah, another good question. The form factor of mobile devices obviously plays a big role in determining how they are being used. Smartphones are very small, which makes them more portable, but the screen size, they have smaller screen sizes and reduced computing power and challenging interfaces that limits what can be performed on them. Most commonly, smartphones are used for email, messaging, and social media. Tablets, on the other hand, are slightly less portable. They don't fit in your pocket, but the slightly larger form factor allows them to be used for a broader range of tasks, including document reading, calendar scheduling, web surfing, note-taking, and data collection. More complex tasks like word processing, spreadsheet work, and graphical presentations are overwhelmingly being performed still on PCs, according to our research, because they have the larger screen sizes and more powerful system resources. But really, for each individual and for each enterprise, it's about finding the right device to perform the right tasks.
Great, thanks, Steve. And let's take one final question. David, I'll pass this one to you. How does the cloud-hosted desktop access corporate applications?
Question I should have had there. Sorry about that. I should have had it on the slide because, of course, there's no point in having a desktop in the cloud if it can't access your data and your applications back at your home base. So part of the architecture of the platform enables you to do essentially a site-to-site VPN or MPLS connection where the actual desktop looks like it's sitting on your network. It does full Active Directory integration. So to your end user, it looks the exact same as if they plugged in a new PC to the network. So you see your H drive or your K drive, wherever your shared file folders are, and you see all your applications. You see your intranet. You're on the network, essentially. It's an extension of the network. So you can be assured that most of the customers of this platform are indeed doing what you just asked, which is accessing their data and their enterprise applications back at their organization, even though their desktops are physically sitting in the cloud.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Steve, for taking those questions. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us. As I mentioned at the start of the event, you will be receiving a follow-up email from Enterprise Management Associates tomorrow. It will include the on-demand playback of today's event, as well as a PDF of the speaker slides and some additional resources. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.